In this video, we'll be taking a look at 4 college basketball games happening on December 10th, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 8 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 4 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Liberty versus NC State. If you just glance at the board, it feels pretty simple, right? Big name a CC team at home, 6-3 on the season, playing in a shiny building with a Tech logo on it, laying around a double-digit spread to a Conference USA visitor that a lot of casual fans probably could not pick out of a bracket. That setup whispers automatic blowout to anyone scrolling lines on their phone between meetings. But once you slow down and actually look at who Liberty is, the story starts to shift. They did not show up to Raleigh by accident. They went 28-7 last season, swept their league in the regular season and in the conference tournament, and came into this year again expected to sit on top of Conference USA. The core of that group is still intact, the system they run is the same, and early in this campaign their notes were saying the Flames were holding Division I opponents in the low 60s, while they themselves hovered around 90 with a comfy double-digit margin almost baked into the box score. The fun wrinkle here is that this trip is their first true road game of the year. For a lot of teams, that first walk into someone else's gym moment feels like the classic spot where everything falls apart. But Liberty does not really play like a team that needs chaos to win. They play with structure. They launch a lot of threes, sitting in that you really do not want to leave them open territory in terms of volume, and they treat the ball like it matters, which is why they were being talked about as one of the cleaner teams in turnover rate heading into that Thanksgiving event. If you are grabbing a double-digit underdog, that combination is exactly what you want in your pocket, because hot shooting plus low self-sabotage is how underdogs hang around when the building wants the favorite to run away. You can almost picture it. A couple of early threes go down, the crowd gets a bit restless, and suddenly that big spread feels a lot heavier than it did at lunch. NC State on the other side is not some paper tiger. They score. The numbers put them in that low 90s per game zone, and it looks every bit like a top 15 offense when they are rolling. The catch, and bettors know this story by heart, is that the defense is still lagging behind. They are giving up mid-70s a night and sitting way down the national board on points allowed, which is not what you want to see if you are spotting almost 2 touchdowns in basketball language. The Auburn game is the poster child here. They just watched Auburn shoot close to 60% from the field and light them up at 12 for 22 from deep in that loss. You do not even need a spreadsheet to feel what that means. You just need to imagine standing there while another team fires threes that keep going in while your coach keeps tugging at his polo. And speaking of that coach, the staff in Raleigh is still very much in tinkering mode. They have been open about the idea that the defense is a work in progress and that they are still trying different lineup combinations to find a better balance between scoring juice and getting stops. Analytics do not exactly disagree with that. The predictive models like Ken Palm and Bart Torvik both put this matchup closer to a 10-point spread than some wild 14 or 15-point runaway. That kind of gap screams logo tax, where the ACC brand and home court experience move the number more than the actual possession-by-possession gap between these two teams. Liberty does have some rotation questions, with that vague note about a key guard being day-to-day with a leg issue and a stretch forward dealing with a knee problem, but the overall picture is that they have kept playing well anyway. When a program keeps its system humming even when a couple of pieces are less than 100%, you get exactly the sort of disciplined underdog that can stay inside a big number even if the favorite still walks out with the win. As our first pick for this matchup, the Liberty Flames to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Both offenses can fill up the scoreboard here. NC State is living in that 89 to 94 points per night pocket depending on which sample you look at, and Liberty's early scoring outbursts have been loud enough to show up in highlight packages, not just in tiny box score lines. It is no accident that overs have been hitting more often than unders for both teams so far, which always catches the eye of casual bettors who like points and hate sweating empty trips. But here is the thing, those early overs are built on a very specific diet of opponents and game states. NC State's slate to this point leans on home games where they can overwhelm lesser teams and on neutral floor up-tempo contests where everybody is happy to trade fast breaks. Liberty's big scoring showings, on the other hand, came mostly against by-game level defenses and that single high-flying neutral court weekend. When you pull some of that noise out, the picture looks a little less like a constant fireworks show and a little more like two teams that can score but do not have to play at a ridiculous pace every night. The tempo angle is a big deal here. NC State is not operating at some extreme top 10 pace. They live right around the middle of Division I in possessions per game. Liberty is almost the opposite stereotype of a run-and-gun mid-major. They are built to value the ball, move it, and hunt clean threes rather than sprinting just to get a shot up. Their staff has been more than willing in past seasons to grind through half-court sequences, especially when they step up in class against more athletic rosters. If you have watched early season college hoops long enough, you know those games where both teams come in with big scoring averages, then the first few minutes look more like a chess match than a track event. There is also the coaching mood in Raleigh to think about. After that Auburn game, where NC State got burned from deep, you can almost hear the film session in your head. A lot of get-to-shooters, a lot of no more easy threes, and maybe a bit of I do not care if we win pretty, just get stops. The staff has already talked about trying heavier defensive lineups even when it makes the offense clunkier. That kind of mindset tends to shave a few possessions off a game, or at least make them longer and more physical. And if you know you have Kansas coming into your building in just a few days, you are not exactly eager to turn this one into an 80-possession chaos fest where everyone is gassed by the final media timeout. Even the projections that like points do not scream over by a mile. One preview that is favorable to NC State has a final score in that 80-69 neighborhood, which lands in the high 40s rather than sailing past the posted total. The analytic projections from the big models bunch up closer to the low 150s than to some 160-plus shootout. Pair that with Liberty stepping into its first true road environment, likely tightening the screws on their offensive sets, and you get a path where this game still feels plenty lively without fully matching those raw season scoring averages. You can easily imagine a slower feeling out process early, stretches where Liberty milks the clock to stay within reach, and stretches where NC State chooses defensive discipline over style points, all of which nudge the final combined score downward from what those early box scores alone might suggest. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. New Mexico versus VCU. This is a great little December gut check. You have the altitude crew from Albuquerque dropping down to Richmond, trading thin air for humid noise in a building that crams in roughly 7,600 people and has not seen the home team lose yet this season. New Mexico walks in at 7-2 with a comfy double-digit scoring margin, living just above 82 points a night while allowing right around 69. VCU is 6-3, a perfect 4-0 at home, and they are outscoring opponents by about 13 a game behind an 84-ish offense and a defense that usually lands in the low 70s. Oddsmakers have looked at that home form, cranked up the respect, and tagged the Rams as roughly 9-point favorites with a total in the mid-150s, depending on which book you scroll. Here is where it gets fun. Those VCU home blowouts look gorgeous at first glance, like a highlight reel on loop. Wagner gets sent home in a 103-74 opener. St. Peter's walks into the storm and leaves on the wrong end of 78-61. Coppin State takes a 101-58 punch, and Samford eats an 83-57 loss. Every one of those is loud, crowd-pleasing, and exactly the type of scoreline that makes the casual bettor say, yeah, sure, I will lay the points. What could go wrong? New Mexico's story is not as flashy, but it is a little meaner. Their two real stumbles so far are an 8-point loss on the road in the Rio Grande rivalry at New Mexico State and a neutral floor defeat to an unbeaten Nebraska group that is quietly trying to build its own national narrative. Around those bruises, they have been stacking grown-up results, and lately they have been spending their nights in the pit just shredding people. Alabama State gets a 93 spot dropped on them. New Mexico Highlands gets hit for 97. Then Santa Clara, sitting in the mid-30s in the net rankings, walks into Albuquerque and gets absolutely taken apart in a 98-71 statement game where New Mexico uses a 43-11 second half run like a sledgehammer rather than a scalpel. Pull the camera back and you see two first-year coaching staffs that share one big personality trait: they like movement. VCU is comfortable playing in the mid-70s in possessions per game. New Mexico lives in the low 70s, both well above the national middle lane. It is not run and gun with no conscience, but it is very much let us get into actions early, let us let our athletes breathe. That kind of tempo means momentum swings come in waves instead of slow drips, and once you combine that with a spread asking the home favorite to win by 3 or 4 full trips down the floor, you get exactly the kind of spot where the underdog with a real offense and some non-conference scar tissue can hang around on the scoreboard even while the crowd is trying to blow the roof off. New Mexico has already shown they can trade punches with high major athleticism without needing friendly whistles. From the neutral floor grind against Mississippi State to surviving long stretches against Nebraska before the Huskers finally stretched it. So if this thing turns into that familiar late-game sequence, fouls to extend the clock, free throws, a random press break layup or two, you suddenly remember those extra points you grabbed before tip are not just decoration, they are working as a buffer between the chaos on the floor and your ticket. As our first pick for this matchup, New Mexico to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. This matchup feels like the type where the scoreboard operator should probably stretch beforehand. That number in the mid-150s is not some wild guess. On paper, it is actually pretty reasonable given the way these two play. VCU is throwing up about 84 points per night, New Mexico is sitting just over 82, so their combined average output already lives right in the neighborhood of the posted total before you even talk about tempo, whistles, or the weird stuff that happens in the last 90 seconds of a close game. Stylistically, neither group likes standing around and admiring the shot clock. VCU prefers to get into their stuff quickly, push off misses, and see if the defense flinches in transition. New Mexico is not exactly shy either, living in that low 70s possession range where you can still guard, but you are not pretending this is a half-court coaching clinic from the 90s. When both teams are comfortably above the national average in pace, it is like agreeing before tip that everyone is going to run a little bit more than is good for them. You feel it most when someone strings together back-to-back steals or a couple of long rebounds, and suddenly what looked like a standard game is 10 points ahead of the pace by the under 8 timeout. Then there is VCU's relationship with the three-point line. They are averaging just over 10 made threes a night at close to 36%, which is exactly the blend that drives opposing coaches crazy. Not absurd, just relentless. Now drop that into a matchup with a New Mexico defense that has been allowing almost 9 made threes per game, and you have a built-in volatility switch. If the Rams settle in early at home, and a couple of those first few attempts go down, you are basically watching a fireworks show that the math community politely calls variance, and the rest of us call, oh wow, this total might sail. On the other bench, New Mexico has turned their own scoring profile into something that feels like an avalanche. In 3 of their last 4 home games, they have thrown up 93, 97, and 98 points, and that 98 against Santa Clara was not empty calorie scoring. That 43-11 blast after halftime showed how quickly they can rip a game open once the pace lifts and the second unit starts adding to the pile instead of just holding the line. You can almost hear every bettor with an over ticket breathing a little easier every time that version of New Mexico shows up. VCU is not exactly shy about piling on either. They have already hung 100 or more twice this season and live in the 80s so often that the number almost looks baked into their personality now. That is the kind of team that does not usually shift into walk it up and dribble out the clock mode. If they get a comfortable edge at home, the crowd is rocking, and the roster is built for tempo, coaches are far more likely to let their guys keep playing their style than to slam on the brakes just to engineer a tidy 20-point win. That mindset is great for fans, and frankly, it is pretty nice for anyone sitting on an over. Put it together and the picture is pretty clear. You have two teams both sitting in the top 100 nationally in scoring, both comfortable with tempo, both perfectly fine launching threes, and both with rotations that are deep enough that nobody has to protect tired legs by grinding possessions into dust. Add the usual late-game extras, the extended possessions, the aggressive drives that turn into free throws, the scramble threes from the trailing side. In a matchup like this, the game usually spends more time ahead of the scoring pace needed to clear a mid-150s number than it does sweating that threshold in the final minute. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Western Kentucky versus Marshall. Western Kentucky walks into Huntington with a 6-2 record, feeling pretty comfortable in chaos, while Marshall sits at 5-4 and gets the home crowd, the band, and that we owe somebody one after Virginia vibe. The number on this game is tiny, just a short spread around a pick-type feel, which is the kind of line that makes every loose ball and every whistle matter more than it should. Western Kentucky plays like a team that drank 3 espressos on the bus, ranked inside the national top 15 in tempo and living close to 80 possessions a night, and that pace is not window dressing, it is the entire personality. They push off makes, they hunt the rim, and they lean on a leading scorer who has settled into that give me the ball, I got it role rather than waiting for a system to save them. You can almost picture it, late clock, tough road gym, and they are still happy to attack instead of staring at each other wondering who shoots. On the other side, Marshall is not slow either, more like we like to run, just not quite as wild as those guys. They score around 80 a night, they share the ball, and they have a clear inside-out spine with a stretch forward who can score and a giant in the middle who changes how you think about driving the lane, even if you never say his name out loud correctly on the first try. The flip side is that the Herd give almost as much back on defense as they create on offense, and that is not theory. You saw how quickly things got away from them when Virginia dropped triple digits and turned that game into a teaching tape. That same looseness that makes them fun to watch can make them maddening to trust when every possession is magnified. Against a Western Kentucky team that treats turnovers like invitations to a fast break and is already used to playing high-leverage minutes away from home, that kind of volatility tends to favor the side that is more comfortable living on the edge, especially when you are catching points rather than laying them. As our first pick for this matchup, the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Now, shifting gears from who covers to how wild the scoreboard can get, this matchup feels like it was cooked up by someone who wanted both defenses to sweat on film review. The total sits in that low 160s neighborhood, which sounds outrageous at first glance. Then you remember these two treat slow possession like a suggestion, not a rule. Western Kentucky lives near the top of the national charts for pace, and you can see it in their box scores, mid-80s on offense, high 70s allowed, and it rarely feels like either side is jogging. Missed shots are not dead ends for them, they are runway lights, because every rebound is an excuse to go, and that style does not suddenly change just because the gym is different. Marshall might not be quite as fast by the math, but they are close enough stylistically that it still looks like a track meet most nights. They score right around 80. They rely on spacing, shooting, and a big man who demands help, which opens up kick-out threes that either pop the crowd or lead to long rebounds and more broken floor possessions the other way. You saw what happens when they get dragged into a shootout against a high major. Virginia lit them up for over 100, and even in that loss, Marshall still put up plenty of points of their own. That kind of game is extreme, sure, but it tells you something important. They do not have a let's slow this down and grind it gear. They tend to answer fire with more fire. Put that together with Western Kentucky's eagerness to run even after made baskets, both teams' comfort living in the 80s, and the natural push from a home crowd that wants a show, and you are looking at 40 minutes where trading buckets feels more likely than extended defensive clinics. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Wisconsin versus Nebraska. Picture it for a second. Wisconsin rolls into Lincoln with that big-name glow, fresh off blasting Marquette and carrying plenty of love from the betting market. You know the story, big logo, recent statement win. People are ready to trust that. Yet they are only laying about a point in a place where Nebraska has treated non-conference visitors like an endangered species. You can come take some pictures, but you are probably not leaving happy. Over the last 3+ seasons, Nebraska has a record of 25-1 at home in non-conference games and 38-9 overall at home under Fred Hoiberg, which is a polite way of saying Pinnacle Bank Arena has turned into a serious headache for anyone walking in wearing the wrong colors. This Nebraska team comes in at 9-0, still spotless, coming off that smothering performance against Creighton and riding the longest active win streak in the country into this matchup. That kind of run does not just happen by accident, especially in a power conference. Honestly, when you look at the board and see Nebraska as a small home underdog, catching around +1 to +1.5 depending on where you shop, it feels less like a neutral evaluation and more like a little tax you pay for backing the prettier brand name. Better see Wisconsin, and a lot of them just nod and move on without asking what is actually happening on the floor right now. On paper, both teams check the same boxes: efficient offenses, top 40 style analytic profiles, good enough numbers that those advanced charts look nice when you pull them up on your phone. The twist is where Nebraska has really changed its identity. The jump has come on the defensive end and in how absolutely ruthless they have become about protecting their own court. They have climbed the defensive efficiency ladder over the past few seasons, and the staff even tracks tipped passes as a core heartbeat stat, almost like a coach's Fitbit for defensive effort, and that number has been buzzing along nicely. When a team obsesses over those small disruption plays, it is usually a pretty good hint that nothing is going to be easy for you in their building. Now mix that with a crowd that fully understands what is at stake. They know a program history start is right there on the table. This is a team that is 45-3 when it holds opponents below 1 point per possession and 46-5 when it keeps opponents under 70 points. That is not a fun place to be a road offense, especially for a Wisconsin group that has looked far more explosive and free back home than in true road gyms. Road shots feel a little tighter, communication slips a little, and suddenly those clean sets you ran in practice feel like they are being played inside a washing machine. When you stack all of that together, this number stops feeling like a simple coin flip and starts looking like a spot where the tougher, more desperate home dog has every reason to keep this tight, scrap for 40 minutes, and make anyone laying road chalk sweat it out until the final horn. As our first pick for this matchup, the Nebraska Cornhuskers to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Odds makers have hung this total up in that high 150s neighborhood, with totals floating from about 156.5 into the high 159.5 range, and that is basically their way of saying, we expect both of these offenses to really get going. They are not wrong on pure talent. Wisconsin sits near the top tier nationally in offensive efficiency, and Nebraska is not far behind, and both teams play at a tempo that is just a bit brisker than your average college game. On paper, those ingredients look like they belong in a shootout, and you can see why the first instinct for a lot of casual bettors is to look up and think points, points, points. Here is the thing though, this is not some sleepy early season bye game against a low major. It is a Big Ten opener between two coaching staffs that know each other's tendencies, know each other's counters, and have had time to slice the film every which way. Nebraska just took a naturally free-flowing, high-octane Creighton offense and held it to right around 50 points by turning that game into one long grind of contested jumpers, one-and-done possessions, and swiping hands in passing lanes. That is not about luck, that is about shape and intention. When a team shows you it can drag a high-powered rival into the mud like that, you have to at least consider that they may try to script something similar when another respected offense walks into their building. Most of the analytics-driven previews have Nebraska graded as a legitimately high-end defense, especially in this arena, and they also rank as one of the better teams in the country at keeping opponents off the free throw line. That matters a lot here because Wisconsin quietly lives at the stripe and converts with a very strong rate, so taking that easy scoring avenue away can shave a good handful of points off the final total without anybody really noticing in real time. Wisconsin's overall offensive body of work is still excellent, no doubt, but when you check the efficiency splits, there is a noticeable drop when they leave the friendly sightlines back in Madison. They still execute their stuff, they still run offense like adults, but those avalanche scoring nights tend to show up more often in their own gym than in loud, hostile Big Ten environments. So when you put all of that in the same pot, Nebraska's habit of cashing games where it drags opponents under 70, the emotional weight of chasing a record-tying start, and two staffs that are perfectly happy playing half-court chess instead of turning this into a track meet, that high total starts to feel more like a ceiling than a median outcome. Add in that this number has been nudged up in part by the reputation of these offenses and the general, these teams can really score buzz, and you get a scenario where a game that is still entertaining and competitive can finish a few possessions shy of what the market is asking for, rather than blasting right through it in a blur of threes and free throws. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.